they did a huge, beautiful job in New Hanover County training all these internal precinct chair, poll workers, things internal, right? So what happens the day the paperwork's due? It didn't get turned in time. So how many people did we have on the inside in the precincts? 0.
Whoops.
Oopsies.
Before we begin episode 11, we must get to our action items. Today, May 17th, 6 to 9 p.m., go to the Liberty First Grassroots launch at Springview Church in Wilmington, featuring Alan Mashburn and John Kane. Read the grievance submitted to New Hanover and Pender County schools concerning obscene and harmful books. See the link in the video description below. If you are a teacher who wants to make an anonymous report about harmful practices in schools, contact Gail Forster Major or Patricia Koluch on Facebook, or contact them through libertyfirstgrassroots.com. And if you are a parent who needs an IEP advocate, you can also reach out to Gail. And now get ready for episode 11. All right, we can't go back now. We're live on this recording so we can fix all our mistakes. So welcome to episode 11 of the New Hanover County Action Team. This is part 2 of Liberty First Grassroots. We talked in part 1 extensively with Sue Butcher, the founder of the organization. There are 2 new chapters of Liberty First Grassroots right here at home in New Hanover County and Pender County. And we have the 2 new team leaders of New Hanover County and Pender County, respectively, Gail Major and Patricia Koluch. And ladies, welcome to the show. Again, I'm going to invite you to introduce yourselves. Gail, you drew the straw.
Oh, I did. Thanks, Ashley. So those of you who don't know me, I'm Gail Major. I've been a child advocate in New Hanover County about 2 years. My background in education is pre-K to 6th grade with administrative licensure. Pretty much what brought Patricia and I together is this book Grievance that some of you may have heard about, that is in each county based on the laws of the state and federal and the Constitution. And then you'll hear tonight of how we connected with Sue Butcher with Liberty First Grassroots, which is really just a really great way for us to just step out and finally get some action things going that we've been wanting to do for the last couple of years. So you'll hear a lot about that as we speak tonight, but I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. Patricia.
Hello, Gail, and thank you. Well, I'm not going to repeat what Gail said because that was a good story. I'm from Pender County, and I have been a child advocate my entire life, and I didn't even know it. I was doing it my whole life. And recently, people started referring to me as that. I communicate with the parents in the school, teachers in the school, the children in the school. They contact me. They do the things. They tell me the things that that are important to them, and they're complaining about and they're worried about. But unfortunately, they're not able to speak for themselves, or they're fearful to do so. So that's where I come in. Then, of course, we met, and Gail has done a wonderful job motivating me on a daily basis, getting the grievance done.
Ditto.
Between her research and my research, we were able to do great things. And now I understand that it may be going statewide.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, welcome. You guys, having inspired each other, have both inspired me in turn. Your research just humbles me. I can't believe how much stuff you guys have put together. And I love both of your stories, particularly how you just framed it, Patricia, which is how you became a child advocate. You became an activist without meaning to. You were just sort of doing each next right thing that you felt like you needed to do.
Just taking the lead.
And you became a touchstone for the community. And so getting into that position is closer to so many people than they realize. It's taking that first step to do the thing that you see needs to be addressed in the way that you can address it. And people will respond to that. And then you'll start getting, it's the same with me since I started this. I mean, this is my 11th episode.
Mm-hmm.
And already I have people copying me on emails going, did you see this? And, you know, so it's, yeah, once you start on the path, you'll get some help from people who see what you're doing. So everyone can take heart from that. So let's get down to New Hanover and Pender County, and we'll just go in order like that. Gail, what is we know? So first of all, you mentioned the books in the schools. And for anyone who does want to dig deeper into that, we had a two-parter with Gail and Patricia and Mike Korn for episodes 3 and 4. So anyone who missed that, go back and watch those. There's a lot of extraordinary information there, and you'll get up to speed on that. The books obviously are a priority of yours. What else is a priority of yours in identifying and cultivating grassroots candidates for the upcoming primaries in New Hanover?
Yeah, well, education, of course, as we're finding out, is huge in the whole umbrella of all this. When we look at things holistically, whether it's through our counties, through our states, through our government, through our globalism. So when we look at it and know what we know now, we see the importance of making sure and being involved with candidates that we vet, and which is Liberty First Grassroots, and bring to the people. So in other words, we're going out to meet the neighbors as we do the boots on the grounds and things like that, which is kind of unique, right? In a lot of counties, I know certainly in New Hanover County when we talk about the process of the GOP. So this is just something that we know everyone needs, and with that, it's going to bring a lot of counties in and become more involved as Sue Butcher, gets it going more so through the county. Like we've already talked to some Onslow, some Franklin County. I don't know who you have, Patricia. So you can see it. You can see it branching out already in such a good way. And then as I watched your interview, Ashley, with Sue Butcher, she was talking about that you have a goal, right, on the time frame of when we're going to invoke our time as volunteers and how we get to know each other. Let's just say in my precinct, which is Carolina Beach. I'm excited to get to know some of my neighbors. We just really haven't had that opportunity in the political sense. I was a precinct chair pretty much 2 years, and we never had boots on the ground. So I think this is going to be a very positive thing that we see moving forward.
So, so your first step, as you say, is to make people aware of the organization and what your purpose is, which is to get constitutional conservatives elected in the primaries. And right now, you're gathering volunteers. You're bringing those boots on the ground in. Sue and I ended up talking about the endorsements. And we had talked at the end of our conversation about what the criteria for selection are going to be. And I'm interested, as in your role as a team leader, is part of your role to put together the list of must-have qualities for a candidate to send up the line to Sue? Is she giving you that sort of that? Is she delegating that authority to you guys?
Well, we're going to do the best we can to elect the conservative or find the conservative candidates, and that we might find them knocking on doors. Correct, Gal?
Yeah.
And there's all different ways to find them, but uniquely, once they get to know who we are and that we're in the community, they will reach out to us, and that is what we're hoping for. Just word of mouth, communicating, encouraging people to step up to run for office. And finding that one special person who's just not fearful. And that's the magnet right there, and the green shirts. So that speaks volume, because just being at the school board meetings, I got, hey, can I have one of those shirts? I love them because it says family first on it.
Nice.
And that really impressed people. And that's the whole goal, is family first. So if you believe in family, you believe in the principles, they want to know more. So that's what I came across.
Okay, so we're looking for people to be boots on the ground. So we're getting the word out there to attract some potential candidates. Are you guys looking for a more specific set of qualifications? And the reason I ask that question right now is that you made such a profound statement at the beginning, is that you said that education is central to everything that's going on in society. And I'm not sure what you meant by that, but I kind of feel like it's a lot of people may think like, school board, that's down the list of concerns, but actually taking the kids either physically or emotionally or mentally away from the parents politically, right? That's the most important card in the deck for everything that's going on globally. So given that, I know you're looking for constitutional conservatives generally, people who value freedom of speech, Second Amendment, Fourth Amendment, I mean, all 10 amendments, but I'm thinking of the big ones, right, that are being violated these days. Are there specific issues and just with education, do you have like some red line stuff? Are there certain things that a candidate must be on the right side of? Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oftentimes, because of the complexities of it, whatever words we want to use, whether it's the ideology or Marxism or, I try to simplify it and talk about its morality versus immorality. So as a person reflects on themselves and we get to know them, that's certainly something we want to make sure they're solid on. So in other words, if there's questions we want to ask about education and how do you feel about this or that, I think that can kind of simplify how we see them as a candidate. The first thing I learned when I started to research our school system was the curriculum meeting that they had, which they kind of denied that they had this discussion, but I had it on record, that it was an ideology that was from 100 years ago from England. And in a nutshell, it started in the colleges, which we kind of all know that, and it filtered into K through 12 through the decades. But the whole premise of the child and teaching them the ideology was to turn them into political soldiers. Mm-hmm. So that kind of took me to where I knew the depth was going to be deep. Now, did I know I was going to get this deep as far as global? No, but it's there, and we all understand it. Those of us who are paying attention, just taking it apart and seeing how complex it is, and then of course, saying it simplistically, how we fix it, right? So it ties into education, ties into businesses, it ties into globalism, and it ties into the politics. It knows no party. So that's kind of where we, as the constitutional conservatives, kind of have to pick it apart, I think, to be able to understand it.
So it sounds. I hear what you're saying in terms of. So if I could bring this back to the candidates, it sounds like what you're saying is you're not going to have a hard and fast checklist of must-have positions. It sounds like, and you make such a great point, like if you want to go, someone doesn't need to know the history of the Fabian socialists to get on the team and run a good campaign, right? But I think certainly you would want to at least have candidates who would listen to what you have to say and take what you're saying about how central the schools are to everything seriously enough to get enough of a handle on it that they understand why you're so serious about it. Because I feel like a lot of what happens with you guys, especially, and this is especially because of the abysmal press coverage locally, you guys are kind of dismissed as people who are fabulous, people who are fabricating these fantasies. I mean, the local press, in spite of the fact that kids in school get written schedules that have mental health SEL check-in on them, the local press still will not acknowledge that SEL is part of the schedule.
Well, I don't know about the news, but the schools, I mean, it's pretty right in your face. They have the Cassell, they send the programs home. So we know it's all there. And if you go to the school websites and you look further enough, it's in plain writing. So a lot of people's like, what's Cassell?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So I said, I didn't know what it was. So what did I do? I typed in Google and it comes up. And as you get to the C's and then you get to the A's, you get to the S. Well, that took me to Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And third world countries. So this education is coming globally in, and it's complete ideology. So there's no scientific facts to this education. It's just complete theory.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, why are we putting theory-based education in our schools? So that was my first red flag with the SEL. And then I went to other programs such as STEM. And Gail is saying the STEM program. I was like, what the heck is the STEM program? So I researched STEM program, and what do I find? It's global. It's all global. It's a great program, okay? And it's hands-on for the kids. But what through that process is the parents don't realize what's happening while they're in STEM. So what's happening? These children are being tracked. They're being traced.
Mm.
So when you get to the point of they graduate high school, if they get to a certain quota and they don't excel in that program, in the DPI, there's something stated that, well, we're going to revoke their driver's license, or they're not going to be able to get a driver's license. So how would you like the fact that your child in STEM didn't excel, and then it's told, well, you can't until you finish this, whether you're 18 or 19, you're not going to be able to get your driver's license. So they're forced with the education and the indoctrination, or you can't drive.
So
there's our Constitution.
Yeah, well, everything is becoming a mechanism of tracking and control, and this is the whole issue with the CBDCs, right? Mm-hmm. That they're going to be able to control what you're purchasing and all this,
there you
right?
Go.
Depending on what you say or what you do, who you support, etc. And certainly that's a part of these programs, and that's so funny because that's very reminiscent of the sort of the French style of schooling, where there's testing, where it absolutely decides what career path you can have, by the time you get into middle school.
Well, that's because they're competing globally now. It's just not locally to get your job and get your engineer job or contractor job or whatever you want to be, electrician. So those things are there, but it's competing globally. So
right.
What else is going to come at that point? What are they not telling us?
Yes. Well, yeah, that's right. And I think there's also a move to make the largest contingent of the population completely dependent on the state. So I think disempowering them
compliant.
And compliant. And well, of course, if you depend completely on them, you must obey. But just to bring it back to the candidates, are there any things, because education is your thing and the grievance about the books is your thing, and I think that's great.
Pro-life.
It's great that it's gone statewide. Okay, great.
Pro-life.
So say I'm a candidate and you say, look, here's a few non-negotiables for if you want to get our endorsement in Pender County. Pro-life.
Pro-life.
What about the schools? What do they need to be hip to? What do they need to commit to fighting?
Oh, well, they need to commit to taking SEL out.
Okay.
That has got to go. DEI,
DEI.
As Alan Marshburn stated, DIE, it's got to go.
DIE.
That's his slang. But
DIE.
so, yeah, there's so much going on in the schools right now that I think there's a mass confusion between the students and the teachers, the principals, the Board of Education. There's so much being put in the schools at this point that I don't think anybody really can see the big picture. But I do, because I'm on the outside looking in. And it's really important that if you put the pieces of the puzzles together, it's really in black and white. It's just taking the time to look at it. And so that's my point. I'd like to reach out and show the people exactly my research. Show them that this is global. Show them that we're taking in other countries' educational system. Canada. Mm-hmm. I mean, Cassell's Canada. And so if we take in Canada, well, what do we know about Canada? Do you know what Canada is? So it's educating people. It's a social communist country.
Yeah.
So why are we taking in their education?
Yeah, and I think with the what was the name of the book publisher that we talked about last time? Destiny Follett.
Oh, yes.
I think ultimately we can trace them back to the UK. And in the research that I did, and this is again something that's hiding in plain sight
Right inside.
on the school website, is the global citizenship issue. So for people who don't know about this, the school board voted to put a device in the hand of every student in New Hanover County schools. One of the stipulations is that every student who gets one of these devices will have to first go through something called global citizenship training, which, to those of you who understand that they don't get American citizenship training in their regular education,
No, they don't.
that'll be pretty shocking. So all these things do exist. And I want to put a pin in the question you just brought up, because the question is, for people who haven't become obsessed with this, and who haven't turned it either into their avocation or their full-time job, how do we assimilate and distill all this knowledge so that we can get people understanding? That's one question. Before we get to it, let me just get through the rest of your must-have qualifications for a candidate in Pender County. So we have pro-life.
Second Amendment.
Second Amendment. To be against the woke agenda in the schools.
Has against globalism, and have to understand it and the connections to that. And it's deep. Connections of that is very deep, because it goes into our local businesses, the chambers of commerce, partnerships and sponsors. It goes into their day camps. I have actually literally went on the DPI, and you have to really dive for this. You have to watch their Zoom calls. You have to listen to hours of Zoom calls, and at the end of the calls, you'll hear that there's a partnership. And then when you look up the partnership, it's only one name that really pops up at the end of the program. And I go to the name of that company, and I'm trying to remember the name right now, and I'll tell it to you. You can look it up yourself. It's racial equality.
Yep.
And on the front page of that, it says George Floyd. George Floyd. And it's all CRT. So it's critical race theory right in front of your face. And I think that division right there has got to go. But every single part of the education that I have researched, partnership and sponsors, always leads me to a CRT sponsored program. And the money's connected.
And the CRT, of course, is the
critical race theory, which is
it's the version of Marxism that has been market tested for United States consumption, because we're saddled with this great national guilt about civil right, our history of civil rights in this country. And everyone's first reaction, most people's first reaction, is to bend over backwards when the R word comes out and go, oh, no, we'll do whatever it takes. We support being nice to minorities, blah, 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 blah. And under that guise, this entire Marxist agenda can be inserted. But just to finish up on this section, so Gail, Patricia's list was pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, no woke in the schools, be against globalism. Do you have any to add to that?
They're all very good points, and a little more specific, I'm saying on the parental rights, we know that's very much in violation, and you can actually take that and tie that into Title IX, because that's taking rights away from women, and of course, being in education, who takes care of the children most in the school? The teachers are majority female, and the parents are usually the mothers. So that's where I talk about how that globalism kind of ties into the children and the parents.
Can I break in there? Because I have a specific question about Title IX, and I know you have some expertise on this. What is the fix to bring Title IX back to doing what it was supposed to do, which was to empower and defend women's sports?
Right, and that's really And that's the legislative piece that we're talking about that ties us into Liberty First, because their Liberty First is tied in with NC Values Coalition also, which is huge with legislation up in Raleigh. So with all these different organizations that are working with the government officials that we have on a lot of the issues, the gender one, which is I think has gone through, or I mix up where some of them are at right now, but that's a huge step in North Carolina's the right direction in pulling all this out. Title IX is quite a beast to really rectify it to where it really was started out, for a little more balance between males and females. It's going to take a lot of time to do that. And that is also one of the reasons why it's so important that we bring in the right candidates to work with all of this stuff. There's just been policy changes, right? That just kind of override the Constitution and the laws of the land. And we've become so conditioned to listening to these policy, now there's federal stuff with Title IX, of course, but they keep adding more policies to it. I think I just saw something this past month they changed. So it's very hard to keep up with and very complex on purpose, right?
It's a power grab. It's a power grab on every level to take the parents out of the voice out of the school.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we ask the questions, and I have grandchildren in school, when we ask the question, we're told, well, just go to the teacher and ask, or if there's a problem, go to the principal. And you do that. It's like, oh, it's in the website. So go to the website. Are you kidding me? Have you gone to the website? You want to make, you can figure the curriculum out on the website.
Yeah.
I don't care how many years colleges you went to. You're not going to figure out the curriculum.
Yeah.
It's just a distraction. They don't want to.
And another thing, Ashley, I wanted to point out too, a pattern, at least in North Carolina, I can't speak for a lot of states. What we did also see in education is those that are put into the position of Board of Education often are promoted through the political system.
Yep.
So those are those things where we look very closely now, who's presently there, and if they are working with us as the people, the voices of the people, and if not, we're questioning that and making note of that. So those are the things that I think that was a lot of us weren't aware of until, let's just say, COVID started, when we all have our eyes open now. But that's extremely important because that's exactly what gives those political pushes if we, the people, aren't paying attention to how that works, right? So you have someone that could have been in the board and they're now a commissioner. I got a commissioner, now they're someone that oversees the public school system in the state of North Carolina. That's a huge jump. So those are the things that I think as a state now where we've learned so much on the laws and how the functions are working and, how we can kind of stop things or slow things down. But Title IX, back to that, that's a big beast that really is going to take a lot of people to work on to probably revisit it, Again,
bottom line, do you think the big change that needs to happen is roll back this redefinition of gender? I mean, to me, that would seem to be the first step, right? Because there's a lot of new activity that can be done under this Title IX, a lot of new policies that can be enacted based on a changing of the meaning of the term, right?
Yes.
Male and female.
Yes.
Okay, but that's a long process. So
it actually isn't a long process. Because let's go back to 115C.
Yes, it seems like a simple fix.
It actually is a lot simpler.
Okay.
115C gives the power to the board for the curriculum. They have full authority. We keep forgetting that. So if we're looking at our school board, the only thing we need to remember when we visit them is to say, hey, you implemented this program. And this is what the program you put in front of our children. And these are the books you put in front of our children. And these are the psychologists you put in front of our children. And these are the doctors you sent our children to without our permission. So if they're going to allow that, then their sole responsibility is to let the public know, right?
Right.
But they don't want us to know, but we know. So if we call them out on that, and not so much to be angry at them, but to inform them that we do know, then they can't hide behind it. So if you're pro, you're pro. If you're not, you're not. But we're going to find out.
So this is good. This leads into my next question,
Good.
which is a two-parter. One is, how do you get, so 115C, just to help everybody out.
-98.
So 115C refers to the NC general statutes, and 115C is the long one that governs the education department, essentially. So you can learn a lot just by reading that whole. Is it 115? Is it
115C 98?
98
that in that general category, but the whole chapter is very long, and it covers a lot of different areas. So the primary cause of this is when you look at the things that the school's implementing. This all goes to the Board of Education. My concern is, does the board really understand what's going on with the superintendent, what the superintendent's doing? Do they really understand what's being implemented in our school fully? Because when you look at SEL, they make it sound like a beautiful little thing, don't they?
Yeah.
So now the board is being deceived, maybe?
Well,
they receive the funds, and then guess what? They take the funds from the federal government. Mm-hmm. They take the funds from the state. The state gives the curriculum through the DPI. Who hires the DPI? You know who the DPI is, right? So now we're being told what to teach our children by the DPI, Department of Public Instruction. And if you research the DPI, they're just a hired entity. So basically, if you like the company and you do this, then we're all good. But no, if the company is found out, then we could fire that company and get somebody else. I mean, that's how it rolls.
Yeah. So right now we're dealing with
complicated.
We're dealing with an issue that's a little bit like that. Did we end up replacing our council? Did that happen in New Hanover County?
I don't know the final. There was a firm chosen. Does it have to be finalized? I'm not quite sure on that. Okay. So I don't know the time frame, but yes.
But this rolls into my two questions. There seems to be two hurdles for people like the two of you. One is to get potential fellow activists to dig into this unpleasant and confusing subject and get them engaged. How do you get that? How do you craft your messaging to really grab people and make them understand that they have to get involved? And not only that they have to get involved, but if they do get involved, they can make a difference. Because I think a lot of people think like, hey, I don't want to, it's like you're doing open heart surgery and someone walks by in the hallway and you go, can you come hold this clamp? And they're like, I don't want that guy to die, but I can't put my hand in there, I think that's how people feel. So how do you get over that hump? Crystallizing all these big issues into easy to understand chunks, or at least breadcrumbs that lead them to the gingerbread house ultimately. But then the other side is, what do you do with entrenched power, particularly in the bureaucracy, who hears what you have to say, who hears you say, well, we've let you know that we know you're violating these statutes and you no longer have immunity because you've been told. And they look at the situation and go, well, no one's listening to these ladies, so we don't got to do nothing.
Oh, but they are listening. They are listening.
Okay.
And I get that message every single day, every single time I get a text or a messenger on Facebook. So when you look at it, if you can define the SEL, if you can define CRT, it's not even critical race theory, CT, because that's Sheree Chapman. She's a great advocate for the communist socialist agenda, which is what this is. So
shout out.
If we can,
Chapman.
Yeah, Chapman. So if we can kind of put this in a big ball and just kind of show people exactly what this education is and prove it to them in a simple pamphlet form, which is what I started to design last week. Again, I haven't had a chance to talk to you about that, but I started with a pamphlet, and this is a program that Mike is using that I have available for Mike Horn. Shout out to Mike Horn.
Mike Horn.
So if we take all the information we have and we put it in a little pamphlet, we talk about the Constitution, we talk about our rights, we talk about parental rights, we talk about the education, we talk about the pornography, we talk about the harmful materials, and the agenda of the globalism, and then prove where the globalism is coming in through partnerships You can condense it very simply to explain to the average citizen of what's happening to our country. Now they're watching the news. They're starting to wake up a little bit. They're starting to get a little nervous about the transgendering and the social workers. But no, not in Pender County, not in New Hanover, right, Gail? It doesn't happen in our county. It's just everywhere else but our county, right?
Yeah.
It's here and it's not going to go anywhere. And people want to sit home. They're getting mad. They're getting mad and they have no idea what to do. So if we knock on their door, we contact them, we email, we do whatever we can. We kind of inform, hey, we're here. Would you like to help and in what area? So we have election integrity. We're constitutionalists, so we understand that and they'll understand that because when you're on Facebook and you get blocked for something you share, people are not taking that very lightly. And it's been going on.
Let me just jump in here. For those of you who are seeing this before part one, in part one, we talked about all the great resources through the partnerships that LFG has that are on the LFG website.
That's correct.
So just if you want to get up to speed, go to libertyfirstgrassroots.com, go to the partners page, and each of those links, including insight.org, will give you a lot of places to go and learn and get involved with very simple things like, signing petitions and
So if they want to get active, we have a place to put them. So if they're interested with election integrity, well, we can direct them to that. And
so the answer is you have a plan for distilling this stuff and passing it out. So part of it is just getting the message out there. Okay, you have a plan for that. And then the other part is, instead of people having to understand everything before they jump in, is just encourage them to come participate.
Well, right.
And then they get themselves into it at their own pace.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So most people know what really bothers them the most. And it might be several things, but some people will be drawn to election integrity and they will focus on that because it aggravates and upsets them. And they want to know how this happened and how Joe Biden got in the White House.
Right.
So a lot of people still fixed on that. So they need answers. And when you look, we all are. Is he president? That's a whole new story. But anyway, so if you find their talent and their interest, and you can say, hey, it's not just education. It's just not reading books. It's the election integrity. There's so many more things.
So I hear the plan for getting the troops involved, and I have another question about that in terms of what other strategies you guys can employ that I'll come back to later. But let's take the second, and maybe Gail, you can take this half of the question. So the first half of the question is, how do we get the troops excited and interested and get past the ice cream headache of all the details that we can throw at them, right? And just get them active. So we haven't answered that. But the other part is, what do we do about public officials who know we have them by the book, but then stonewall us because they don't think we pose an actual threat? How do you deal with being ignored?
Well, we don't intend to be a threat. We don't want to be a threat to them. But if we are, that's not by what we are saying.
What I mean by a threat is a threat to the current policies, the current sort of way of doing business.
Well, for me, I'm a
mechanism of woke indoctrination, for instance. A lot of people would lose a lot of money and a lot of status. And if the people who had to answer professionally for the statutes that they violated, a lot of people lose their jobs. So that's what I mean. How do you deal with being ignored by public officials?
Well, I think a lot of times when they see it's factual, they will have to respond somewhere. And let's just go right back to the board, right? So they know that's sitting on their lap, and they've been, at least New Hanover County, they've been advised, hey, it's been 5 months. What are you doing? So, there will be
this is exactly what I want you to talk about, but just remember, you're continuing a conversation with me. Let's bring first timers into it. Just give the quick what happened up until now.
Right. And a lot of we're so conditioned
in Hanover County.
Pardon me?
Where are we at with the grievance in New Hanover County? And then we'll see where we're at with Pender with the books that did get removed, but maybe they're not now.
Some are.
Okay, so we'll get an update on where we are. So where are we at with the books in New Hanover County?
We're at a standstill. We're not sure where the board is on what they've done or what they haven't done. My communication has been, have you pulled the books. I've not had an answer. It's been 5 months now. Haven't gotten an answer. So I don't know if that has something to do with the lawyers, but it should not. It should be them speaking to the public. So we should still be questioning them.
So here's the thing that we talked about maybe months ago now is, you know, in 115C, in the larger thing, in the larger set of statutes governing the schools, it's incumbent upon the superintendent's office to respond to complaints, right? In other words, they can't just ignore complaints. They have to respond. They have to deal with it through a certain set of procedures. There has to be a paper trail. It's happened very often that complaints just haven't been fielded by the superintendent's office. And this is a violation of the standard of his duties. It's one of the causes for termination that we have for Faust and potentially other people in the current superintendent's office. With you, they came up with this interesting excuse, which was because you're not a parent, your complaint doesn't count. So
It's anything goes. Yeah.
I don't know if the board said that. That was the news media.
No, this was no.
I was definitely told that by Title IX. It oversees, the Title IX director oversees your internal confidential complaints. So when I initially did a complaint on some books that I found that a certain live social media specialist in the one of the high schools, it was rejected right away. It was rejected in the sense of, it said, well, if you're not a parent and a parent has to do X and Y, which was you have to notify the principal and you have to notify the social media. So they just totally, the director of Title IX just totally shot me down. And I said, what? You know, that's part of the grievance. So those correspondences with those government officials, every government official in New Hanover County received some kind of a letter on the books. So
you know, that's one thing that Sue Butcher said to me, and I'm going to repeat it as often as I can, is anytime you're sending an email to the party or to the county or the city or the state or wherever,
yes,
CC somebody.
Yes, always.
And you don't have to be CC somebody because you're also letting the recipient know.
That's correct. That's how we were able to remove a teacher probably about a year or so ago. And that was because the child was talking to the parent was talking to me, and we were documenting everything. And then that forced the compliance guy to take a stance. Now the prince or this teacher should have been reprimanded, but they often do okay, you can just resign or leave, you know. So those are those things that have been common practice that we don't tell you what's going down. We don't inform you what's going on. We make sure we try to get you to call or stop in. We don't want you to document. And busy parents, it's very easy to fall into that. So part of my job is, as an advocate, I would always try to inform parents. We unfortunately don't hear much from teachers, but I think as time is the awareness is becoming stronger, I think parents are starting to ask more very good questions and starting to report.
Always document.
Writing.
So, this reminds me of a thought I had way back during the campaign in 2022. I forget who I was talking to this about. It might have been Diane, but it strikes me that one of the issues is that you're a citizen activist and you have this great background in education, but you're not a lawyer, you know. And it strikes me that one of the issues with public officials sort of thumbing their noses at people who have them dead to rights in some circumstances is that they feel, you know, they can do a little sort of legalistic song and dance and they'll just diffuse those efforts. And so much more that applies to, as you say, the busy parents. So two parts. Each of my two-part questions has a sub two-part question. Because I'm trying to make this simple for everybody. But what would you think about, where are the constitutionalist, conservative, civil rights lawyers? Because where are they? Because we could use, I mean, if we had one good lawyer with our local groups, or one good lawyer who could, take the masterpiece you put together with this grievance and run with it, I think it would be a very different set of outcomes. The other idea is, if we were to find someone who could put together sort of boilerplate legal documents, like if I were like, is there a resource out there? There must be, where you say, you're a parent, you need to fight woke. Here's a boilerplate legal document that when you encounter X in the classroom, you give it to your kid, and your kid gives it to the teacher, and the teacher now understands that they're part of a process. Mm-hmm. Are there resources like that?
Do you have an answer for that, Gail? I have a little bit.
Well, I was just going to talk about with Liberty First, they do have some legal advice people. So, not that I want to go woo woo, but yes, a huge woo woo. So wow. That was one of the things we knew we were missing, right? When I was working on my master's in administration, you had to take school law. Well, if you look at school law, Ohio was pretty good. North Carolina, not very good at all. They're weak, and their laws are weak to protect the children, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, when I looked at the cases, federal court cases, they were usually placed by parents, oftentimes special ed. Very common. So think about that now. So now here we are, looking at legal stuff, and no one knows where to go because it's so different. It's not really just special ed. It's so huge of an umbrella. You're not even sure where to start, right? So that's what was so beautiful with Patricia and Mike, because, I had a lot of research that I had done with the evidence, but I didn't know how to apply it until we sat down, literally almost like we were lawyers, right, Patricia? Yeah. Just tearing apart the federal laws, the general statutes, the state laws, and then reading a few things. So those were things that now us as lay people, we can give that to others, that are civilians, that this is what we have to do, and we can help the lawyers who are bogged down. We're handing them a grievance. It's all done, right? It's just a matter of someone coming to the board and saying, why aren't you acting, right?
So I got a phone call this afternoon. One of our Patriot friends says they're going to be pulling our children in. This is as per on the school board, at the school board meeting, and they're going to be able to talk to the children without the parents there and do whatever they need to do. Well, that's against the law. She goes, it is? I said, yeah, there's a statute in there. They're not allowed to interview your children without your knowledge and presence. She goes, can I have that law? So now I got to go home and pull it back up and send it to her. But you see, people are paying attention. How can they do that? Well, they can't. They can if we let them.
Right.
So if we don't know there's a law for that, no child could be pulled into the principal's office for any circumstances without the knowledge of the parents at all. And especially police officers or social workers. It's against the law.
And that,
there's so many.
So there has to be notification, but not prior. So, like in the case of a disciplinary thing where you get sent,
has to contact the parent.
It has to be prior.
Has to contact the parent
before they send them down there.
No, so they can go to the principal's office.
There has to be a notification.
They can't be spoken to until there's a notification, and they get an approval from a parent.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Well, and again, a lot of that is all based on policy. I think ours has something where New Hanover County, where you don't have to notify the parents. So again, we allow it, thinking it's a law, but it's only a policy. That's where we all need to be educated on that, the process and understanding our rights.
Well, and regardless of, so the only obviously I got a kind of familiar with the seclusion issue, and I know with the seclusion issue, it was retroactive. So in other words, once a child is secluded, then you have 24 hours to notify the staff has to notify the principal before the end of the day. Then the principal has to notify the parent by the end of the week, or at most a month, something like that. But even within those, you find like any little anecdotal stories you hear, you just hear violation after violation of those.
Correct.
They do all those things because it's their child and no longer ours. It's unconstitutional, number one. And number two, if you go into the policy, and most parents need to go to the student handbook under disciplinary. If you go to the disciplinary, at the bottom, there's a statute that will bring you down into what you need to know about the law itself. So, and honestly, I've had this situation with my own children raising.
So just pause real there, because you're going fast for people.
Oh, am I?
So yeah, it's okay. It's okay. But this is more accessible than you think.
Yes.
You hear policy handbook and you go, where do I get that?
Okay.
But you go in New Hanover County.
Yes.
Oh,
You just go. You just or
Yeah, you don't just go. It's very challenging to find stuff. Yeah.
But you can drill down into
It's a
in New
simple
Hanover. There's a multicolored page on the website.
Yes.
This thing can actually start.
It has
So
all the
most-
policies.
I'm not sure if they're sending these handbooks home anymore, and they're just putting them online, but there's a simple student hand policy. So it tells you that the student and the parents must follow all these rules.
Mhm.
Well, okay, so we're all rule followers. We like to follow rules. That's what we've been taught to do, right? But it also applies in there is a law stated in that book under each policy. It's always a reference to the law.
Mhm.
Okay, so if you take the law and you look at it, well, that law also applies to the school, but most people don't look at the school having to follow law. It's just us.
Right.
So the schools have to follow the same laws we have to follow in the schools.
Yeah.
That's
So
where it
I think the overall takeaway in this, and it can't be said enough, is you empower yourself by knowing the rules that are supposed to be observed. And often if you read the laws and you go to the people who are supposed to be carrying them out, better than they do.
Right. So they're going to give you the one basic statute under the policy that in reference to the policy, the law of the policy, right?
Mhm.
So they give you the statute. But when you get into that statute, don't just stop at that first paragraph. Read down some. And in there, you'll see a statement that a child, they cannot talk to a child without the parent present or the parent permission. So I have to go back and research that law again because, like I said, the subject came up today. But it's there in black and white. And so when you look at the school board, they're everyday people who run for office like you and I.
Mhm.
They get there, they trust their attorneys to lead them, right?
Mhm.
But not attorneys don't know all the laws. They have to look them up too. So they get used to following the policies and they see the law, but so they're following the policy because they see the statute, but they don't really read the statute.
Well,
So this is how we're getting caught up into it.
So there's a bunch of things going on here.
Mhm.
The other thing is that there's a bunch of different silos of policy. And what you're saying is that it's possible that a principle in one silo of policy contradicts the law in another silo of policy.
It's a power reach. It's a power grab.
But then also within the school, a lot of what people are doing, whether they're staff or whether they're on the board or whether they're in the attorney's office, is they're working off habit. So it's whatever the custom has been in the professional environment they go into, and they're not necessarily aware
They're not.
that they're violating
Right.
the law, which is where the immunity thing comes in,
Correct.
because they are protected through ignorance.
Yeah, that's why
But
we
once
have to
you
inform
point
them.
the law out to them, which is the breakthrough you guys made, they
Yeah.
lose that immunity. They can't just say, well, this is the bureaucratic culture, and I was being a good employee by following the bureaucratic culture. I wasn't trying to do anything bad. I was trying to do what everyone told me to do. But when you have told them, okay, but the laws of this state are very clear, and now you've been told by one of the people who employs you, citizen, me, right? Then they lose that immunity. So that's very powerful. Great.
But it's
What
our job
about-
to inform them. And so if we don't go to the school board meetings, we don't even, the county commissioners sometimes, and they literally sometimes break the law and they don't realize they're doing it. I've watched them and it's like, are you kidding me?
And presumably there will be some people who are grateful to have been informed. It's not all going to be people going,
You know,
you
I think
found me out, you know,
Yeah.
they might be go, oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah,
that
so
you
we're
told
not
me that."
against the school board. You know, we're not against our county, but we're trying to redirect them. And some of them don't like it. Some of them are like, oh, okay, that's interesting. You know, so, you know, I'm not going to speak for them, but I know I would want to know. If I was sitting in that chair, I would want to know.
For sure. Gail, I feel like you were trying to add something there for a while.
I'm not sure.
we went down.
There's so much, you know, when you start talking about it, it has so many arms and legs in it. But
Great. So I did have the second part of the question. I've remembered
Sure.
it now.
Okay, good.
So this is going up a few levels. But so you have your pamphlets that you're going to put out.
Mhm.
You have you have a vision of how you're going to crystallize this for people and make it simple and accessible. And then you're going to get people to get involved and follow their talents and their passions in all these different areas where they can participate. You have LFG at the state level has the legislative day of action every second month. Are you guys taking advantage at all of something like that locally? Are you going to have days of action where, because it seems to me they've been very successful in making contact with lawmakers and getting lawmakers to listen in Raleigh. Do you guys have any plans for something like, you know, a local version of that where people have the chance to come out and speak to elected officials?
Yeah, so we go once a month, right, Gal?
pardon me?
We go once a month to legislation. So anybody's welcome to join us and they're welcome to see how we do it. And then they'll go around to legislation. We set up our tables. We talk to the legislators.
So you go to Raleigh.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's mind blowing, isn't it, Gal?
Yeah, it really was. It was really just a great process to see. We hope to get in there to speak before legislation, but they've actually come out to us and very attentive and, you know, trying to understand. This was basically when we were really just talking about the books. And it was both, you know, it was bipartisan. So it was an interesting perspective for us to see of how the people that are the lawmakers, you know, have their thought process. And you know, we learned a lot just on how we can become more successful too, combining all that. But jumping to your question about bringing it to the local, as we look into these candidates, we'll be having events is one thing. And I'm sure there's going to be more things that Sue Butcher's going to kind of pull us into. So we have one coming up May 17th. So that will be an open one where they'll be advertising quite a bit. It all comes from them. It's not just little old us trying to get Johnny over here to give us permission to get this paperwork, you know, that we have to wait 3 days for to get ink on it. No, it's very well structured. And they will let that go in mass media. It goes out to, we may combine counties, right, Patricia? It's going to be at least Pender and New Hanover.
Yeah, that's
maybe
correct.
Brunswick again. And we might even bring in some other ones that we meet. We meet different counties at the state level too. So like Franklin can come. So it really does go across the state in the sense of, hey, this is what's going on. When you get on the LFG website, you'll see different counties talking to one another. So that's going to be huge as far as bringing in the people that may have been disenfranchised, not knowing what's going on politically, want to get involved. They get to see a couple of candidates. Somebody might be talking about election integrity because that's all part of Liberty First also. So that May 17th, I think, is a start to
what is do we have a name for this event?
I think they're going to just call it Liberty First Grassroots, aren't they, Patricia?
Correct. My understanding, yes. And it'll be at the Northside Baptist Church.
Not Northside.
WIlmington, Northside.
Not Northside.
I'm sorry, not Northside.
Is it Sunnyview? Springview. Thank you.
Springview.
Springview.
There you go.
Yeah, I was.
always say north side.
North side was the convention that we remember.
That's why. Yeah, that's a night.
Oh yeah, right. So that's a huge start. That we get to introduce some
Gail,
of the candidates.
Gail,
Yes. What did I miss? Something?
I have to interrupt and be silly here. Anyone who's watching understands I have no poker face, because the second she said Northside Baptist Church, I just went.
Oops.
We did a little research on
They're all
that too.
lovely people.
Yes, they are lovely.
We're all brothers and sisters in Christ.
I can't believe I said north side. I don't know how he's going to edit that, but okay.
That's great.
And it's not that north side. It's just
Brothers and sisters, let us pray.
amen.
Let us
Amen.
pray for unity and for love and forgiveness.
Sanity.
Forgetfulness.
Oh, good Lord.
What's
So
gonna
hopefully that
happen
answers your question.
So what's going to happen is we're going to do an online registration for the May 17th event.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone very helpful from Northside Baptist Church is going to call everyone who's registered.
Yeah, sure.
And this person is going to tell everyone that they call who's gay, who's having an affair, who's an undercover Democrat.
Right, Hispanic.
Yeah, all the dirty laundry is going to come out. So when
Oh,
you
boy.
show up at the event as a free-thinking conservative person, you will have been given your marching orders.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
There
how
you go.
grassroots works. And by the way, that monologue, I take total responsibility for that. Whoever's watching, don't put that on these lovely ladies from Liberty. I forced it on them. They take no responsibility for my crazy monologue. Sorry. Great. So it's just called Liberty First Grassroots. It's going to be at the Springview Baptist Church, just as you go out of town there on that's the
North
extension
College
of
Road,
North
North
College
College
Road.
Yes.
Right. Is it right before or after Grace Church, the big one?
It's right after.
Right after.
Well, it
Okay.
depends on
Yeah,
which
right
direction
after.
you come.
If you're coming from town.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a Wednesday.
It's a Wednesday, and do we have it? And what time?
6 o'clock, I believe we said.
Yes, I think it'll be 6 to 9. 6 to 9.
We are going to have some awesome speakers, right, Gail?
Oh yeah, who's on the docket? Do we know?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Who's
Speakers. We're going to have some awesome speakers.
Oh, candidate for Lieutenant Governor Alan Mashburn and candidate for NCGOP John Kane.
Oh great. So John Kane is running against Michael Watley, who's
Yes.
running for re-election.
Yes.
Okay.
As far as I know.
Okay. And so
And we are working on one other surprise speaker. We have not gotten confirmation yet, but we're still working on it.
Alan Mashburn, John Kane. So for anyone who hasn't watched the John Kane video about how the North Carolina GOP dropped the ball on making sure there was parity among the parties in poll workers, that's an absolute must watch, because I think that's the crux.
What county was that? Was that it wasn't Franklin?
It was out of Surrey.
Surrey, yeah,
But But he did a survey of all the counties after the election, and he heard back from 2/3 of them.
wow.
And based on that, he found that the average was a 3-to-1 ratio, Democrats to Republicans statewide, and that there were at least 9 counties that had 0 Republican poll workers. And it's the response. So I think that's the whole basis, actually, of his candidacy, is that he called Watley out on this, saying, hey, why aren't you managing this?
Yes.
Well, it's my understanding today, there was a little bit of release. I haven't gotten all the information yet, but it seems to be that maybe some of the chairs around the county are dropping like flies, resigning. Have you heard that story yet?
I have not. Chairs resigning. Where did you hear that? Or who? What counties? Give me your sources.
I don't know the county. I heard it too, but I don't know the county.
We'll make sure I got that one right. But
Okay.
I'm gonna say Franklin, but don't hold me to it. I can look it up while you.
I don't believe it's Franklin.
Do you recall, Gail? You paying attention, huh?
Well, because I kind of know the people in Franklin, and that the gal wasn't from Franklin, so I'm not sure, but it is an interesting thing to be happening, Ashley. Correct? But what we did find out just this year, I mean, being a precinct chair, there were a lot of things that I picked up on, and I grew up in politics. Many people know that. Small town politics, but nonetheless, politics is politics.
Yep.
At the kitchen table kind of thing. So when I saw this last one where you could see there was a pattern, if we started to talk to other counties of the way things were run or not run correctly. So there's where I would imagine where John Kane came in when he started to research that. He probably did see that pattern. They all talk to each other. So it's very disheartening when you say, well, gee, I knew something wasn't right there, right? Like, especially when we were trying to volunteer and nobody wanted us, right? You had hundreds of volunteers and they didn't want you, in your county. You're like, what's going on here?
Great.
But
I'm glad you brought that up. I don't want to cut you off.
No, that's okay.
But I want to come back to that. Just finish your thought, and I just want to come back to the question of how you see running in parallel to the GOP ground game is going to work. But finish what you were saying, but then let's not drop that, because that's something I wanted to talk through.
No. Well, I'm just saying, so we all started to see certain patterns across, the state and into these counties. And we're like, oh, okay. For instance, where we had totally trained all these inside precinct chair workers. What was the Jonathan Uzgadi year? 2020? I'm losing track of the years.
Was it 2019? No, it was 2021.
2021. So I knew it was an odd number. Anyways, they did a huge, beautiful job in New Hanover County training all these internal precinct chair, poll workers, things internal, right? So what happens the day the paperwork's due? It didn't get turned in time. So how many people did we have on the inside in the precincts? 0.
Whoops.
Oopsies.
Wow.
So then this last one, they were saying, oh, we don't think we need very many people. And yeah, it's almost like Patricia knows the Board of Elections process very well. We're outnumbered with our staff in New Hanover County. I think we had 5 and 2, Patricia. I'm not sure. We weren't even sure if there were 2. We knew there was 1. And then I think that guy might not even be there. So I don't even know what that imbalance is in the Board of Elections too. So those are the things that, that definitely, as we talk about looking at candidates, we want to make sure all these things we have to pay attention to. They're so significant.
Yeah. And, Sue talked about some of this in part 1. So I might even have to go back and watch a little bit of that, because she addressed that too of, how do we keep the GOP in line on issues where they don't necessarily have to include us.
Cherokee County. Oops, sorry. Cherokee. Somebody touched it. Yep, Cherokee County. That's where they had the problem with the chairs. So just dropped off all of them.
The chair resigned?
Mm-hmm. Lots of them. So here's the
precinct chairs, I believe, right?
Oh, the precinct chairs.
Precinct chairs.
Precinct chairs, yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
And secretaries, my understanding, and I got a phone call today too. I want to mention any names, but apparently there's been one GOP who stepped down from her chair in one of the counties, and then is your read on this that they are being volunteered to step down, or that they're stepping down? Well, they're stepping down because they don't want to go along to get along anymore. So if they don't have a voice and they're not being heard, they're just stepping back saying, I'm not going to do the work.
So that's part of the answer, right? If we have something similar to that here, where people feel like this is not the machine I want to work in, that makes it easier for us to go and, or not us, but a group like LFG to go and create a parallel organization that has a direct relationship to the candidates, which I think is how Sue has managed the workaround of the party, where the party and LFG aren't on the same page.
So if you look at yourself as a Republican and you join the GOP, you go to your convention, you become a delegate, you go to state, you do the things and you work your community, and you pull in your grassroots and you go out there and you do door knocking and you do your job you're supposed to do as priest and chair. Well, what happens if you don't have a priest and chair and all of a sudden their voice doesn't matter because now they're asking questions? Because that's what we're learning today. We're learning to ask questions. We had a convention, an all-time convention in New Hanover County where you guys had a whole new slate, and that was a wild ride, right? But so when people start to think, I wonder what, and then they're displaced. They're like, well, why am I doing all this work and I don't even have a voice? So that's what the story is going on here. Of for whatever reason, everybody's going to have a different reason, but it's not like we're anti-GOP. They're anti-grassroots. So if you're going to have a state convention and you want to invite Watley, and there's two candidates, why isn't your local GOP inviting Kane? Mm-hmm. So why are they not speaking about it or giving us the opportunity to say, hey, who do we want to vote for? They're not even giving us the opportunity. It's
very interesting. As someone who's probably been called an undercover Democrat more than anyone in this county, it's very interesting to see how the squashing of debate is a common practice from the Democrats on the national level. They're not holding primary debates. You guys know this story?
I heard that.
They have multiple candidates announced, but they're not holding primary debates. Similarly,
they can't. They'll be slaughtered.
Similarly, the local GOP is not too excited about debates either. So I wonder if that what you were saying, right? That you're not inviting the opposition to have the people.
Well, and it's not like I'm mad at my local GOP. I'm not. But if I don't feel welcomed and I don't see them doing the things to look at both sides, I'm going, this is a controlled opposition, and I don't like being controlled. I like having a voice. I like having an opinion.
You're right. It's not about party. It's about identifying the mechanisms of control and saying this isn't a tyranny.
Right.
I choose to do things my own way. So that's interesting. I wonder if that would be a lane that has been created for you guys. Maybe you guys could sponsor debates.
Oh, that'd be nice.
And then if the establishment candidate doesn't want to show up, then it just becomes a speech for your guy.
Yeah,
I'm ready to get them all.
Right. There could be a lot of beauty in that. Yeah, for sure.
We could have it be like a game show. And we give them some money or like a prize, a vacation or something, because like they're not the greedy ones to come, the corrupt ones would go, okay, there's money in it.
Yeah, and we could do a gong show too in there.
Yeah, it's like a gong show, except for it's survive 15 minutes against Patricia. And if you can make it 15 minutes in open debate with Patricia, you get to go on a vacation.
Well, this is how bad they are. Let's just I'm not going to even mention any names, but one candidate starts running for a county commissioner. And, he's a Democrat. He changed over to Republican Party and moved from one county to the other. I won't mention any names. I think everybody knows that by now. But he says, I'm not for CRT. No, not me. I'm for SEL. I got died. But no one else got it. Mm-hmm. Nobody understood the mechanism of CRT, SEL, and the DEI. So, no, he's for SEL. Well, it's the same exact thing. They take advantage of people who don't know.
Yeah, and I wanted to pick up on something you'd said earlier about your research into KSL. There's a video, and you guys stay on me until I share it with you, of the president or whatever, the president of KSL or the top management having a video conference where they're talking about how they're implementing KSL and what the point of it all is. And literally, the title of the discussion is SEL is a lever for CRT.
It is, yes.
It's, it's a Trojan horse.
Yeah. Oh, they actually say that?
They don't say Trojan horse. They say lever.
Lever.
But they
see
talk,
the tricky words they use?
yeah, but they talk about, we're using this to get this other thing in.
Mm-hmm.
So all the people who try to draw a distinction. So anyway, remind me to send that.
Well, I always prove it with the money, because wherever the money comes is what they're implementing. So they get the smaller people to do the smaller, it's way deep. So obviously, say if they want to hire, for example, GE, well, then GE's not going to have on their front page that they're for CRT or they're George Floyd or any kind of racist on their front page, right? So you go to the next partnership, see that that's involved. Well, they're not going to really put out in days like it's the third sponsor. And that's where you track the page to the critical racer where the money's flowing to. And they're the guys in the community who are coming into our day camps. These are the guys that are coming into our schools and having one-on-one and long time summer camps with our children. I mean, GE isn't coming in doing it. It's the smaller sponsors. And so we're being taken advantage at the highest level.
It's like a shell company for GE.
Yeah.
They have the little CRT drill sergeant camp that they train people at, and go, okay, well, look, you have this great resume now because you've been in this training program. So you're the person to come in and introduce this to our community.
When I discovered all this money flow and the cancer, and Gail's sending me emails, I'm sending her emails. And as you look into the little highlight areas and you hit the little guy there and you go there, oh Lord, it takes you down a rabbit hole. You're like, look, we're all human. We all get upset about politics. We all cry for our country. We're all worried about the children. We're worried about our jobs. We're worried about the economy. We're worried about a lot of things lately, whether we're going to go to war or we're going to have food and the inflation, right? We got a lot of things to worry about. But when you read the cancerous effects into our education, when you start to see where the money's flowing from, literally, you want to get sick. And then you say, well, Patricia, you're doing all this for nothing because it doesn't matter, because it's such a cancer. There's such a big flow of money. We lost. But then I said, you know what? No. You're forgetting what you wrote in your grievance. 115C. The board has full authority. It goes back on the board.
Okay. So I'm glad you came to this, because a lot of people are seeing that ahead of time. I talked with Sue Butcher the other night about how when she goes door to door to talk about the dirty books in the schools, she doesn't even lead with the dirtiest stuff because she knows it's too much for people to handle. She can only tell them what they're showing the kids in grade school. She can't lead with all boys aren't blue because they just can't accept it. So you're talking about something that I wanted to ask about, which is how do people, and interesting, something that Patricia said to me before we started is there, a lot of this is orchestrated and playing out the way it was meant to play out. She pointed out to me that many kids now, like most kids, are actually being raised by their grandkids because of the undermining that happened of their parents.
From my perspective in Pender County, yes.
Yeah, their parents. But I think that's very common in socialist and communist societies, because I know when I started to turn towards the right is when I spent a couple of years living in Ireland, where 50% of the country is on the dole. And in that country, all of the children are raised by the grandparents because the parents get just enough money to go out and get drunk 6 nights a week.
Get drunk.
And from 14 to whatever, 25, they can't be bothered to be home with the kids. So it's the grandparents who raise them, the grandparents, and of course the schools, which is where the indoctrination comes in. So you just expressed something that I think a lot of people who could see themselves and you might worry about, which is it's all too big. How do I fight it? Where do I find the energy? So
how does my husband not lose his job if I speak up? How does my wife not lose her job if I speak up? There's a lot of concerns within the community. So you get the secret messaging behind doors, makes them feel better. They told you the complaint, you process your complaint, you hold on to it, you keep your confidentiality, you earn their trust, you don't blabber it all over the place. You just simply say, hey, this is this, you email, and you document. So, you get a folder, right, Gail? Folder like this high from complaint from parents, whether it be special education, the teacher credibilities, to the students being harassed by another teacher, being yelled at, screamed at, or whether it's a teacher inappropriately looking at a child that the principal already knows about but can't find anything, has never really seen anything, so can't do anything. But many children complaining that a teacher is inappropriately looking at a child and saying things, oh, you look beautiful today. And it's never by the self-assured child. Like my grandchild goes in and she holds her head up. She knows who she is and she's not afraid. So she recognized, my granddaughter, who's 12, recognized that the children who might have troubled homes are the ones who are being preyed upon.
Sure.
So she started seeing that pattern. So these children today are very important. So the parents just speak to the child and find out what's going on in school. The littlest things, and it piles up, and they want to be spoken to. They want to tell you their story to you, and it adds up. And there are some things that are going on that just isn't. These teachers are overworked, probably underpaid, overstressed. Some may be good, some may be bad. But I have to believe in our education system as far as teachers, their hearts where they're at. But there's always one or two or three that are just not as what we think they are. And maybe they just need to retire, or maybe they need to find a different career because there's things happening in our school.
So let me parse some of this up a bit to just tease out the takeaways, because in my mind, the people who are looking at this are the people who want to be the next you or the next you or your next teammates. So the first part we talked about was, how do you not get discouraged by feeling like you're losing? And I think what you're saying is that the reward, you can think about all the things that are against you, but when you get into it, you have the rewards of doing the right thing that you don't necessarily anticipate going on. The other thing you've gotten into is this issue of how complicit are the teachers. And in my mind, and tell me if you guys agree, there's a small number of teachers who are true believers in the whole woke indoctrination thing. And they feel like they're fixing all the ills of Western culture, and they're on the front lines of turning this thing around and, whatever it is, giving the white man what he finally deserves, or, burning the Mona Lisa in effigy like they did in that ridiculous Glass Onion movie. You have that element who, when you catch them, won't be surprised. They will avoid and keep trying to do the same thing. But you have a larger group who are just trying. They don't love what's happening in the schools, but they're trying to find their lane, to do what they can, to be a math teacher or a science teacher and not make any trouble. It seems to me that those are the people that we need to engage, because right now, if you look at the teachers' organizations, they're all leftist organizations. And is it your sense that there is sort of a silent majority within the teacher population?
Very, very silent. Very silent.
So
I'll get the 3 a.m. text in the morning.
So they talk to you. How do we turn that into activating them and getting them to stand up and speak out?
They can't. They're afraid of losing their jobs. They
have to know there's some support. And, again, I don't know how quickly it can turn around. With an organization like Liberty First, they start to see more of us that can help. For instance, I'm starting to get calls and contacts because I was trained in reading IEPs, and I've designed them also, just on the need for help in that area. So there's a lot of different areas through the educational system that are broken. So depending on what that is, if people in our community start to see that there's a group of us that are helpful, then I think we'll start to hear from more parents, and I would certainly hope more teachers too.
Well, we have to build their trust.
What'd you say, Patricia?
You have to build a trust, and you
Yes.
say you're going to be at a meeting with them, you show up. If I say I can give them 10, 15 minutes at 3 a.m. in the morning, I give them the 10, 15 minutes and I respond to them. But I think and the teachers do care. They really do truly care. But here's the secret. So our voices are being taken away, right? Well, the children, they're a lot braver than you think, and they're a lot smarter. So if the parents teach the children to speak about what's going on, that's all we need. I have children videotaping in school, sending me videos of outlandish behavior by teachers. Just all these different things are adding up. If one student comes to my house and says, I'm very uncomfortable with that teacher. He's always looking me up, down, always telling me how beautiful I am. And it makes her creepy. And she's not the only child. So another teacher inquires, do you think any of that stuff's going on in our school? I said, I can't say there is, and I can't say there isn't because I don't have enough proof. And I'm just not going to go have a teacher lose a job because a child says something. I have to document it. And you just got to give the children a voice. And you tell them, just keep telling me every time you see something. Keep telling me, you document it. So you get to a certain point and you get enough information, then you can take that and email a principal about your concern and then let him keep eyes on it. But today I had that conversation with a principal and he said, oh, I know about that. His comment to me, and I record everything I do, he said, I know about that. I just have never seen anything, but I have heard what you're saying. So a student is telling a principal that a teacher is making her feel uncomfortable the way he treats her and talks to her, and he knows about it, yet nothing can be done.
And he can't,
So
he can't speak to the person, or
well,
would he tell you?
Gail, you might have a bit more experience in this because you've been down.
He might not be able to tell you if he had said something to that person.
No, he said to me, I don't have any proof of it.
Right. But I'm saying,
but it's
if I were in his position.
So it's not a story coming through me. It's coming through his students, and it's going to the principal, and it's coming to me. So it's verified that it's serious enough to tell two different people who care about these children.
Right.
So it's happening, just not having him do it.
There is a moral and legal obligation. They just don't follow it. And it's been so, as you said earlier, Ashley, it's been so chronic that we're all just so conditioned to it. Whether it's walking into the board and if you have never walked into a board and you go into a board of education for the first time, it blows your mind. It blew mine 2 years ago. That's when I knew I had to get involved politically. So until we change things and with legislation, it's going to take a long time. What happens to the public schools, meanwhile, don't know. I mean, I think Liberty Bell, Dr. McMaster's kind of put it quite well. We might just have to shut them all down. So we don't have a quick fix. The only thing we have is try to build trust. And I love the idea, like Patricia said, those young voices are the best voices. I was a whistleblower in a private school. I was all by myself as an administrator. It was really the teachers that were trying to do good things. It was the outside money, mostly parents, the wealth that they had that had the power and control. So until you have that trust with someone, you cannot make a change. So I think that's what we're starting to see now with everybody becoming more awake and aware of the enormity of what's really happening and going on in education and otherwise. So until they start to see a volume of us out there, meaning we the people, we're the ones that are being silenced the most, and we have been for a long time.
We just have to communicate within the community and verify and check and use reasonable doubt and reasonable suspicion. Documenting isn't calling your school, complaining and venting and getting your therapy session and letting it all out and go back to work and say, okay, I dealt with that, because you really didn't, even though you had your voice heard, but that's it. You got heard, no action. Because why? Documentation. Email your principal, email your school board, document. That's Gail's favorite words. You must document. I'm learning that the hard way.
And it is true too. The pattern is still the same from decades ago. It really affects the poorest of the poor the most.
Right.
They're the most vulnerable. They always have been.
And that takes me to the summer camps that I've researched with all the sponsors and the sponsorships and the partnerships. that led me down into the rabbit hole with the money and the CRT and the racial equity. And they're the smaller ones. And it goes into all the different day camps, but you have to dig to find the connection. And all of it comes through the DPI. It goes from the DPI to our woke colleges to our corporate business, and then from corporate businesses, they co-sponsor with I can't remember one of them now, which is Dogwood. Dogwood was one of them.
Dogwood.
So research Dogwood.
So the first that just okay, we're back. We took a little.
We wanted to go over the books.
We took a break for me to say goodnight to my wife. Family first. Let's just very briefly. The book situation is stalled in New Hanover County with your most recent interaction with the person who's working under Faust, the administrator that he passed you off to.
Well, it's just the board that I'm dealing with right now. So the board hasn't been talking to me.
So they haven't responded to you. Now, don't answer this if it's speaking out of school, but you're addressing the board as a body. Are you able to have conversations with, and you don't have to name them, any of the individual board members, or is that not happening?
Not anymore. I was told that they weren't, the lawyer, the previous lawyers told them not to talk to me, which that sounds like malarkey to me. So, yeah.
I'm getting the same treatment, but I still like my board.
So I think it's the game I think they're playing that are we going to have legal eyes on it? Well, yes is the answer to that.
So that's interesting. I wonder if the council only has the authority to advise.
That's correct.
The council does not have the authority to direct.
That's correct.
So that seems like a pretty, pretty bogus excuse on the part of the board members.
Yep.
And I say that, and I say that
it wasn't the whole board. So, I wasn't at the last board meeting. I often follow up with emails, but right now, I'm waiting to see, school's going to be out in a few weeks.
So and they may just feel like it's better to do all this stuff over the summer.
Sometimes that could be the case. Yes. But to not even pull the books, you would think that the people, the community should be screaming like, okay, why didn't you at least pull the books? 5 months is not acceptable.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it again is this just refusal to acknowledge reality on the part of the media. And it's no surprise. I mean, they sold us all the mask lies. They sold us all the vaccine lies. They sold us, yes, it makes perfect scientific sense to quarantine the healthy, all this stuff. The fact that they won't acknowledge that SEL is on the schedule, and the fact that they won't acknowledge that there's pornographic material in the schools is, I think, one of the reasons the community isn't up in arms. Because they go, I hear this, but then I look at the news and the news says, no. Smut for kids is protected by the First Amendment. Right. So just a quick question I wanted to get from earlier, and we'll get the update on Pender, which had a little more motion on the books. How does Sue at the state level? So you said she's gotten some legal help, so they have counsel. That's one of the pieces you were looking for. What about media? What kind of media do they have? Are they relying solely on person to person, social media, group to group, community building? Do they have any outlets?
I think it's a whole combination of things. But as far as the book situation goes, it has some uniqueness to it because it has that legal strength. So I think once it gets to the right eyes with the right legal mind, that will hear, it's all going to be kind of something that we have to all come together and say, how does this play out, or how should it play out?
I think we have a voice, and it's in different locations. Like Alan Marshburn, he has the Carolina Conservatives. So he's very pro on getting the books out and the genderism.
I was more asking
Yeah.
if there are any conservative outlets that they have the ear of,
Well, not really. I mean,
papers or publications of any kind.
No,
Okay.
not really. I mean, we have several left-leaning reporters who are actually very nice to us.
Yeah,
I think you know who they are.
they're nice to you, but did
Yes.
they get your word out?
They did fairly. They did. I think they did fairly. So I got no complaints on that. I think they're.
I think with us being at the state level, yes, we will start to see those, like the AP Dillon's a journalist.
Right.
You'll see maybe the John Locke's, things like that. But right now, no, it's still not out there enough. So that's why I think Patricia had initially said we could make this, or you have made it, a blanket grievance that any county can cut and paste.
Do. So great. So we have the update. We're kind of stalled on the grievance in New Hanover County. Tell us real quickly what happened with the books that were taken out, and then what's happening now.
Okay, so Pender County has approximately 7 books they're claiming they're taking out that was on my grievance, but actually there's 8 because one was probably taken out by a school board member.
Okay.
A year ago. They ran down there and they took it out. It was genderqueer, so it was that bad. So that was taken out. So we've got a total of 8 books. The board's supposed to be coming back this month, I think, to tomorrow night, as a matter of fact. We have a board meeting, and they are supposed to maybe finalize some more details. So I haven't gotten anything since then. But on the subject as attorney, I have always tried to avoid an attorney, trying to work with my county.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big attorney person as far as wanting to sue somebody. I always try to get the benefit of the doubt. Let's work it out. Let's fix this. But at this point, if I'm seeing my board's hands tied, then I don't think we have any other choice to go legal. And I believe we have legal hands and eyes on the grievance now.
With the books that got taken out,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where I heard or read this. Is there some chance that they may be brought back in?
Unless they're disputed by a certain group. But if the board does that, that's on them. And I know there's a lot of books that they do not want back in there. They cannot.
So the way it worked is that there were more than 8 books on your list. There were
at 40. Well, I get confused because the media says 42 and then they say 40. I'm like,
sure.
Okay,
but it was a few dozen.
Yeah.
And they removed all of them during a period of review.
Yes.
They reviewed all of them.
Mm-hmm.
And, for people who are watching who are thinking, oh, well, only 7 out of 42.
So, well,
I think it's better to cast a wider net. And then, like we had that one thing where we thought something was like a genital abuse type thing.
Wow.
And then it turned out it had the other thing on it that you take so they took the time to review it.
Mm-hmm.
And out of those 42, they kept 7 out and put the rest back in.
Well, I haven't got confirmation of the other books. Some of them are not finished yet.
Oh,
So
they're still reviewing it.
So, but
Okay.
there's a few that came back, and one of the most disturbing ones was Speak, which is the curriculum one. So I had to really read that book in full to understand why they're doing this curriculum on Speak. And we could talk about that because that's really important. And then there's another book they took out. Do you remember which one it was? Because there's so many of them. But middle school and say Cape Fear kept it in. No, took it out. And Surf City keeps it in middle school. So one school wants to keep it, the other school doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm seeing here, more importantly, and when we put this grievance together, we did this strategically, knowing what was in these books.
So that's interesting.
I knew that what I wanted to see was who was in what school. And I'm starting to see a pattern of behavior. You see what I'm talking about, Gail? You know what I'm talking about? So
pattern of behavior by who was in what school. Tell me what you mean. Certain
parts of the county. So Surf City, every single book that I have researched, and I'm going to say 99.9 came through Surf City first. School district.
So for people in other counties who may be getting into this odyssey that you guys got into, understand that the likelihood is that within a county there is probably a district, and there was probably a person. All they need is one person pushing this agenda in one district to flood the whole county. Because what you observe is that this person,
Pattern doesn't lie.
and what you observe is that you find that person where you find the resistance. So the books will come out of the schools that they spread it to.
Well, it may be
But
their
they'll keep
primary
it.
source where they order all the books, but it's coming through the one media center, through Surf City, and some Topsail, very close neighbored. Okay,
City
very
and
close
Topsail.
neighbored. But since day one, when I started researching these books, I even had a conversation with one of the board members. Says, "What's with Surf City? It's got some nasty books in there, and it's coming from Surf City." Well, of course, I didn't get much response from that, but all hands on deck, Surf City. So the
You think
amazing.
any chance these people are renting out a trailer in Surf City?
I don't know, but see, the media coordinator,
Which
is,
may have been the presumed residence of a former commissioner.
I love your comedy, but I mean, this like
I'm
blows my
sorry.
mind.
I'm sorry. This is
So you-
serious stuff.
It is really serious because it really is very disturbing to see the
Mhm.
pattern of these books being ordered by Destiny Follett, being pushed to a media coordinator, possibly that coordinates with Destiny Follett. I don't have those details, but I can only see what I can see. Is that they're coming in through Surf City School District, and they're going to Topsail, then they creep on over. And I find very few out in Pender Lee. And that's like way out there.
So you're able to identify the district
Sources.
and the office that it's coming through. Does that
Yes.
mean you're able to identify the person?
No, but that's what I need. I think our board needs to look at who's ordering these books, because so many, actually, there's so many more. I have a stack like this big on my desk ready to give the school board again. And then there's a gender ideology. So I've decided from this day forward, I'm not reading any more books because I'm going to need therapy.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it no more.
So have you, I'm sure they push back, but is there a law-based response?
There's a
Can-
responsibility to find out where those books came from.
Are they allowed to hide the identity of this person? If you said, "Hey, I want to know who's ordering these books. I know it's coming
I
through
can do
the
a public request on it and look at
public records request."
right.
You have to do a public records request to find out
and if I
who's
don't
in the organizational chart.
right, so if I don't get it, which I don't think I will, because I've done public requests and I got nothing.
And they go nowhere.
So you could do it FOIA, right, Gal? We do FOIAs, and so FOIAs is something they have to do.
So I just want to
FOIA, Freedom of Information Act.
Freedom of Information. My dad used to work in the
Yeah.
Freedom of Information office, but I just want everyone to stop and absorb that the lack of transparency in the school system is such that you can't know. You would think you'd be able to say, "Can I just get a list of all the employees in the school? I want to know who's working here."
Well, you can
right?
go to the website and you can look at it.
No, they have privacy. Human resources won't give you that.
But if you look at it and you call the media coordinators, and I have done that in the past, and they explain to me that that's Destiny Follett. Remember, we had this conversation back when some of our other is Destiny Follett recommends it LGBTQ or for whatever reason, health education, sexual health education, and that's how these books are getting in there. But I don't think so, because like I said, let's stick to the pattern. So I can't say it's the media coordinator. I cannot say it's not the main office. I can't say that it's Destiny Follett. It's a combination, I believe, from what I'm seeing. But I'm not an investigation. It's just right in front of your face. It's coming from Surf City.
Yeah, and I think it really has to come from the globalism in order to be stopped. So now that we know, now that we know and can track Follett Destiny, who now has a new name, at the local level, we knew, at least New Hanover, one of the gals that was doing some of the research with me, she found a social media gal that was considered Follett. So now does that mean she went to each school to make sure they had so many books by Follett? Don't know the whole story, but that was the information she was given. Then when we did the research, and I knew, because I used to work in school libraries, I knew that you had a sales rep, right? So we found the sales rep. I can't remember if it's Surrey or so. There's a sales rep around here too. So you have those, and by mistake, I actually found 93 school systems in the United States. Why 93? Why only 93? Why is New Hanover County possibly the only one in North Carolina? So on and so on.
Are these targeting bellwether counties? Are these targeting?
Well, they might.
Some
be
of them some of them were private schools. You could tell by the title, but it didn't give you anything other than the title of the school.
So
the
I'm
name.
thinking, Gail, maybe she's the person who gets hired for Destiny Follett comes in and does like a southeastern corner.
Correct.
Because I didn't see anything else on the list. Like Pender wasn't on it. I didn't see
Nope.
Brunswick, it was Wilmington. So I think they stationary in Wilmington, and then they branch out to all the other schools and try to do the ordering at that point. So we've still got a lot to learn on it.
There's definitely a system across the United States that turns to global. And what's that look like? In other words, when you talk about Cassell, you talk about Follett, they're both Chicago, Illinois. So you have those little connectors, and that's the things I'm starting to talk about. What are the connectors that we see in our society that give us this, right? Bring us up here to the global or to the harm or to whatever. So you have to look at the smaller scale with the education, then you bring it through. So with Follett, I'm just shocked that nobody's even talking about them.
Well,
right?
Now Follett is huge. It's a huge marker, and we could probably get a lot of beef for that, but that's okay. I don't really care. With what Gail and I have seen a pattern of these books coming in, because you have a pattern like I do in Pender, in New Hanover. I have Surf City. Yours is?
It's Ashley or Laney, the high school.
That's where the books are coming in. So there's somebody in that position there. And that's where they're ordered. The really important ideas is so much, and it's not necessary to know everything to get at them.
Let me just ask a question. So we know these books are coming in New Hanover primarily through Ashley and Laney.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a question that could be asked at a school board meeting? Say, hey, these books are being ordered through these two schools. So who is it? Can you tell us who it is who we're paying to work in our schools, who's so interested in bringing these pornographic books into the schools? Who's the person who's responsible?
Well, you're very
for
polite,
this?
because my question to the board tomorrow night is, who are the perverts ordering these books that's in our school? Who are the perverts? If you look up the definition of pervert, it doesn't mean that it's a child molester or this and that. The ideology of these books is perverted. It's simply perverted. And Pastor John, when I spoke in New Hanover, he's wonderful. And when I heard him say that, I said, amen. Amen, because that's exactly what the problem. Somebody in our schools not dealing with a full deck.
So you're asking that question
tomorrow night at the school board.
And we're back.
And we're back.
And we're back.
I think this is so much fun.
Okay, so I think we've covered a lot of stuff. For people who want to see that tomorrow, because I think one of the things you talk about putting something out there and then people in the community coming to you through back channels, if you ask that specific question, say, I know it's coming through Surf City. I know it's coming through, what was the other one you said? Topsail. So it's either, so is it the media coordinator? Is it this person? You know, who is it in that school who's so interested? If people want to see Patricia ask that question, you can either show up in person at the Pender County School Board meeting tomorrow night. It starts at
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Catherine Heritage Center.
Catherine Heritage Center, Burgaw. You can easily Google that, or you can go to YouTube, and I believe it's streamed live.
It is streamed live.
It's streamed live. So you can watch this from anywhere in the state. And you know what? I think someone watching may know the answer to the question you asked tomorrow night, and we may get a name. Because at some point, you know, you got to call out the camp guards, right? You know,
You do.
Right?
we don't want to wait till it's all over and then go after them, you know, be chasing them, you know, 60 years from now.
Well, hopefully people understand what contents are in the book, because if you don't believe there could be pornography in our school, first of all, you're in total delusional state.
Complete denial.
I've read enough. Miguel's read enough. We've heard enough on national news. It's not a secret anymore.
Yep.
No.
You know, And I spoke about the genderism and the transgenderism months ago, and the school board said, "Well, you're crazy."
And the whole argument that it's there to make children who are different feel comfortable. There's nothing comfortable about reading that stuff.
There isn't. And then there are some.
I mean, a kid who hasn't had his first kiss, who hasn't even, when you remember when you were a kid and you were like, do I hold hands? Even when you were like, whatever, preteen or teenager, just that, all those things that have so much emotion and power tied up in them.
Yeah.
And then the total sort of
and the thing, and the thing I think a lot of people don't realize with the Grievance between Pavement Education Project and booklooks.org, they've already read them. So you don't have to read the book. You got the worst of the worst in the Grievance.
Right.
Worst pages of the worst. So for those that want to stand up and say we want to ban them, that's hokey mokey. So you just grab one of those books that we have a grievance on, and some of them even have, what was that called? The silk sheet, or what was that one? It was just one sheet that had the worst of the worst in the whole book. They summarized. Yeah. Booklooks.org does that. So it's very clear that as we did our mission statement, which is also unique, Patricia, I think you'll agree, that we broke it down, that we started to see they weren't just books that had obscenity. They were mental anguish books. They were harmful. They were teaching them how to kill themselves. They were teaching them how to hate themselves, or, so on and so forth. So those categories are going to the state level, and they've been presented to legislation. So I do think we're going to have different categories. I think that's through Pavement Education Project. They're going to have different categories of ratings down the road.
Yes.
Now, it's not going to happen tomorrow.
This is the finding through the book committee. One very important book is Speak, right? Gail, you understand this book as well. I had to read this book, and I was so disturbed reading it, and I couldn't figure out why when I was reading it. And it took about a week to kind of go, what was that? And today, I really summed it up. So basically, they make a book of a girl who was raped in school, who's very depressed, deep secrets about everything she thinks about and feels. It's a dark trail. Okay. So my child at 12 and 13-year-old would have to read this book and swim and say, what's she learning from it? Well, the girl happened to get raped, never told anybody, never did anything about it, got worse off, suicidal, seen everything on a very dark, in a very dark realm. And then all of a sudden, because she spoke to a girlfriend, just happened to speak to her friend, gets raped again because she pisses the guy off who raped her. So he gets mad and he's going to rape her again. This time they're in a closet. She fights back a little bit. She screams. Someone hears her, knocks on the door. So she becomes the hero because she screamed for help. And then she got an A+ on her art project because she went through all this darkness and found her art and her talent through all this trauma. But the big picture is this. People get paid to listen to those dark realities of rape and all kinds of things, and suicide and cutting themselves. Professionals get paid to listen to that. My child's having to read it in school. And I had a hard time dealing with it. How do you think a 12-year-old is going to take it, and 13? So that is the emotional harm and the social harm they're putting on our children, so they can get them into the therapy office and maybe the grades will stop. And then maybe they'll have so much trouble that they want to read a gay book and start acting out, or maybe there's some violence in the school. Then they get to the social worker, and then the social worker will bring in.
It's traumatizing literature, and for them to say that, well, but it may reach a young girl who's had this experience and it may help her. It's saying
she should have been in front of a therapist.
Well, first of all, it's saying that there's no other mechanisms for helping that girl.
So I have to go through it?
And then it's ignoring the cost of all the kids who weren't exposed to it if they hadn't read the book.
Right, but it's like sitting for hours in front of a therapist listening to someone about her rape and her depression. A 12-year-old child isn't getting paid to be the therapist. And what's she going to learn from it?
And the therapist who is working a child through those kinds of experiences is taking them through in steps.
With no,
it's not here. you work through this at your own pace, you know, and they absorb it in an afternoon. You know?
I'm not even
so
being.
It's abusive.
It's mentally and emotionally abusive to put a child reading a book about a child that should be in therapy telling those deep, dark secrets to a therapist, not another child.
Well, and you know,
right, Gail?
Think about how, well, anyway, we used to be taught history. You know,
his story.
You know, so we knew about World War II when we were a certain age, but we didn't dig into the nitty gritty of the Holocaust till we were in high school. And when that was done, you know.
But what about choices? I mean, you know, they're forced to read this book in the curriculum class. This isn't something they walk in the library and choose to read.
Right.
This is forced upon them in curriculum. There's 25 books in Pender County that these teachers are teaching curriculum with, and it's in the classroom material. And that
that's also in the grievance too, professional development. Okay.
The 25 that are in the curriculum
is in the classroom and is given to the students by the teachers.
So speak, I think, what did I have? I think I had 36 copies of speak. But there's two sections, or there's two different types of books. They'll say speak, and then they call one speak a graphic novel, which is more intense. So that's a cue for anybody teaching it, that it's more graphic, obviously. So that was the hard one. So those are the common things that you're seeing, that there's the professional development that is so deep. That is definitely telling us that these teachers are trained to get that mental anguish in these kids' heads.
They're trained to undermine their emotional stability. They're trained to undermine their sense of identity. Yeah. They're trained to undermine their faith in their family, in their country, in the future, and make them completely dependent on the state.
It's a total distraction. Yeah. How many days after I read Speak in full was I upset, Gail? 2-3 days.
So I want to wrap up here, and I think it's an appropriate place to wrap up because I'm starting to get overwhelmed about it. And I think the thing that people who are still watching, which is probably not much, but they may say, "Oh gosh, I don't want to get into this." So let's just dial it back to how we start and what keeps us going. And I think how we start is going to one of the live events, whether that's a school board meeting, whether that's a legislative day of action in Raleigh, whether that's the May 17th event at Springview Church. Some of you may want to go to Northridge Church on the 17th. I won't be there. They're all good people.
Trauma.
Go to one of these things, see the people stand up, put their hands over their hearts, pledge allegiance, say a prayer together. It's very moving. And in spite of how difficult it can become, you may lose energy, but you never lose faith.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got a grip on the books now. I think we have a system that they were just going to keep rolling, so we don't have to get so emotional in that, because that was the breakdown for me and Gal, is we literally had to dive into reading it and understanding what was there. And we're done, right? Because I'm done. So I'm going to give them a list to be proactive. Let the school do their job now. Let the school board, right, Gail? Let them take some responsibility and be proactive in the research of these books instead of my doing the job for them. I think it's their responsibility.
Yep.
They put them in the school.
Now, just real quickly, in terms of building your local organizations, any specific roles you're looking for people to fill, or you're just more interested in meeting people and having those roles define themselves out of the converstions you end up having face-to-face?
Whatever interest they have, whether it be election integrity, education's deep. But there are a lot of people who feel
there's just a lot of areas where people can help out, so we'll meet people that just, that are just either single or new to the area, and they just want to get involved. And then some of them would really do anything. I do get a lot of people offering to do the books. I still do. And that just is time consuming for me. If I had somebody just we could show them even how to look for things. But again, we're hoping we're in a good place where we're going to start getting action on these books.
Yeah, well, let's hope. Keep us updated on that. And as Patricia just pointed out, anyone who does want to help with the books, it is a huge emotional burden to have to work through these. So if you can take, these two have been carrying that load for quite some time. Any volunteers who are willing to take on some of that burden, that's going to help them, to have the list that's been parsed by someone else and just go, okay, this is no good. Tell me what the deal is, so I don't have to go through it. That's a big thing.
We have a direction for them. We have a direction for them to get the support they need if they're interested in election integrity, whether they list. Now we have all the support we need with a parent education project, First Grassroots, Liberty First Grassroots. I'm getting tired. It's time to go home. But it's amazing the contacts that we've made, and it's so invigorating. Now I wake up every morning, I'm excited for the day because I don't feel alone. I don't feel like, I'm the only one doing the work and the only one who cares. There's a lot of people that care. They just need someplace to go.
Yep. So the first place is May 17th. That's going to be a first action item. And the next thing I would say is going to be revisit that grievance from episode 3 and 4, and I'll repost that link. Any other actions or links you want me to post for the action items? I usually try to do 3. I'll throw one out there. You said you got a lot of testimony. We were talking about the silent majority amongst the teachers. If you have an anonymous testimonial, send them in, because these could be compiled.
They can be compiled, and I'm saving them. And I hope that we never have to use them in a way that's, like legal, but it's not that the names will be exposed or the student's name will be exposed. I just really need to know whether it was a female or a male, the date it happened, just the basic stuff. And my sources will all be hidden. I will never expose a source, ever, a teacher's name or anything.
Yeah.
So just keep in mind, if you are in that cohort who's trying to stay in the game without playing the game, but you're not happy with what's happening. You have 2 people here in a larger organization that respects your anonymity, but wants your voice to be heard. You're not silenced by the schools as long as you have people who will get your message out there. And that's definitely something you guys want to do. So I'll make that action item 3. Anyone who wants to report anything anonymously, these are the people who can, if they can't do something about it, they will pass it on to someone who will be part of a local organization with state ties that'll take care of
And
it.
that's
right. And if I could add individual evaluation plans, IEPs, that's something that parents or guardians are very fearful to reach out on. If they know there's an advocate, I'm now an advocate for anyone that needs help on that. I can look at them. I can go to meetings. You can bring in an advocate if you have questions on your child or your guardian on their services, because that's certainly a huge concern. The services are lacking for sure.
All right.
And
well, I think we covered everything. Sorry.
We
you
did.
have one more thing?
She did an amazing job on the last IEP. I mean, she did an amazing job. And I walked out there very happy with the situation. But having the extra ear on for the parent, because, we've got to remember, you have a special ed student or a child, you're tired, you're worried. So having the extra ear and the extra mind there makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Doesn't it, Gail?
Yes. However stonewalled you're getting, there are people in the community who are willing to lend an ear and lend a hand, and who may have something in hand that they've applied somewhere else. And that's you guys. And we're also lucky to have you in Pender and in New Hanover County. And it's Monday. I'm aware of what day it is. And I'm going to sign off now that I have my full faculty. Thank you so much. Tomorrow night's school meeting. Go to the school meeting or check it out online.
Good night.
Thanks, Ashley. Bye, Patricia.
Bye.